Yamada is a lifeless loser, destined to die a virgin for being so edgy. However, when he meets a hot but depressed girl, he falls in love with her. Now he will try to rizz her up and cure her depression with his sausage. It all began after Akani's boyfriend, Takuma, admitted to cheating on her with a girl he met in the online game they both played, and then ended things with her. She had pretended to be okay so he wouldn't see how depressed she was by his betrayal, but when she returned home, she sought solace in the online game she played with Takuma, only to discover that he had unfriended her. Annoyed, she went hunting and was having a swell time taking out her frustration on the game until a bored-looking Afro elf named Yamada showed up. So the guy asked if she was out hunting for a rare item. Ikane replied that she wasn't, and angrily explained that she was playing to distract herself from the fact that she had been dumped, telling him the story of everything that happened. Uninterested in her relationship recap, he said he didn't care and logged out. A little while later, she received a notification from the game about an upcoming IRL event and immediately wondered if Takuma would attend it. Hoping that he would, she decided to go. Eventually, the day of the event came. As she walked around, she spotted Takuma with his new girl, but still ogled him shamelessly because she lacked self-respect.
Oh my god, bro.
The worst part was that she even tried to chase after them and accidentally fell after bumping into someone. Thankfully, this fall was enough to bring her back to her senses, and just as she was about to start crying at her own stupidity, the guy she'd bumped into asked if she was okay. Looking up, she was shocked to see a tall glass of handsome staring back at her with her shoe in his hand, and she couldn't help but wonder if this was her K-drama moment. She quickly got back to her feet, assuring him that she was fine, and then put her shoe back on. When she attempted to apologize and explain why she'd bumped into him like a clumsy oaf, the guy told her he didn't care and walked out. However, his behavior seemed a bit nostalgic to her, making her recall the same words Yamada said. So without thinking, she called him Yamada. To her surprise, he turned around, asking who she was, but before she could answer, she heard Takuma's voice behind her and turned to see him standing there with his new girlfriend. Akane tried to act surprised, but the guy walked past her to greet Yamada because, as it turns out, Yamada was a gaming legend, and he was one of his fans. Feeling jealous, Akane made sure to insert herself in the conversation, and when Takuma finally noticed her, she pretended that Yamada was her new man. Yamada tried to deny it, but she pleaded with him to play along to save her remaining dignity, and also promised to give him the rare item pin code that she received for attending the event. The promise of the pin pushed Yamada to agree, and Akane's ex wasn't happy about it, because he couldn't believe that Akane, who was very much a novice in the gaming world, had bagged his idol when he was still trying to get his attention in his comment section.
Why are you gay?
As he began sulking, his lip goddess of a girlfriend started comforting him, and Akane couldn't help but wish it was her.
No! God, please, no!
Later that day, after she somehow convinced Yamada to go drinking with her, Akane kept yapping about how it was disrespectful of Takuma to flaunt his new relationship in her face. When she eventually stopped making everything about herself, she decided to diss Yamada, saying that if he kept up his nonchalant act, no one would want to date him. Yamada told her he didn't care, and when he revealed that he'd never had a girlfriend before, she was shocked, but curious about why. Yamada explained that he just couldn't be bothered with girls, and her first thought was that he batted for the other team.
You are gay.
However, she agreed that relationships were overrated. She then excused herself to go to the bathroom, as she realized that she was starting to obsess over her ex, and while she was there, she noticed for the first time that her clothes were dirty thanks to her fall earlier. She also noticed that she had a scrape on her knee, but at that moment, she couldn't be bothered, and told herself that she regretted going to the event. Once she was feeling a little better, she returned to her table and saw that Yamada wasn't there. The thought that she'd been ditched made her sad, but just as she was about to open the dam, Yamada returned and asked her to sit. After she did, he put a band-aid on her scrape and explained that he'd noticed it earlier, so he went to get the band-aid while she was in the bathroom. His explanation left Akane feeling even more emotional and overwhelmed, so she finally burst into tears, and after thanking him, she insisted that he stick around and drink with her. The following morning, when the hungover Akane woke up, she discovered that she was in Yamada's room and immediately assumed that, in her drunken state, she'd let him hit.
Yeah, boy.
However, Yamada assured her that no clapping of any kind had occurred. He then explained that he'd only brought her to his place because she'd passed out at the restaurant and he didn't know where she lived. Embarrassed, Akane thanked him for not leaving her to an unknown fate and also apologized for all the trouble she had caused him. As she got up to leave, he told her where to find her shirt, which he'd washed because she'd puked on it, and also informed her that he'd paid her bill at the restaurant. Akane thanked him again and offered to pay him back, but Yamada said all he wanted was for her to haul her behind out of his apartment. After she got dressed, he bid her goodbye, saying he hoped they never crossed paths again, and then slammed the door in her face. Later on, after she arrived at her apartment, Akane took a shower, and while she was massaging her face, she suddenly realized that her necklace was missing and panicked. Unfortunately, her search for the necklace in her apartment turned up nothing, so she figured that she'd lost it at Yamada's apartment. Following this, she logged into the game to ask Yamada if he'd seen it after she left, but he wasn't online. This made her sad because she didn't want to lose the necklace, which was a gift from her ex, and even though they weren't together anymore, she still felt an attachment to it. Just then, she received a message from her guildmaster Roihime, who asked if she was doing okay. Akane admitted that she wasn't, and when Roihime offered to listen to her problems, Akane told her everything. They were still chatting when Yamada logged in, so Akane immediately asked if he'd seen her necklace, to which he answered no. He then bid them farewell, saying he was going to hunt. But Rurihime pleaded with him to stay and chat so that Akane would stop feeling sad. Of course, he refused and told Rurihime that she ought to be doing something more important, like finding out who the dumb idiot filling their guild storage with useless items was. When he began trolling whoever it was, Akane admitted she was the one, so Rurihime tried doing damage control. However, Yamada didn't give her the chance. He ruthlessly berated Akane, and by the time he finished, Akane logged out because she was feeling very stupid. This made Rurihime scold Yamada, but he wasn't in the mood to listen to her, so he also logged out. In his room, he stood up from his chair and tried to walk away, but stopped because he stepped on something sharp. Upon closer inspection, he discovered it was Akane's necklace, which was now broken thanks to him. Days later, Akane had lunch with Momo, and when she told her that she was looking for her necklace was missing, Momo pointed out that she was using the necklace as an excuse not to get over that two-timing jerk, Takuma. Akane tried to deny it, but Momo didn't give her a chance and told her to stop being a dumb simp. Later on, as Akane was on her way home, she spotted Yamada standing with two girls at the train station and heard one of them confessing her feelings to him. Akane felt bad for the girl because Yamada didn't even think twice before rejecting her. When he walked away from the girls, Akane walked up to him and called him out for being a heartless jerk towards the girl. As expected, Yamada didn't care, and as they walked to the exit of the station, she attempted to talk to him, but stopped when he kept giving her one-liners. As though he'd been waiting for her to shut up, Yamada stopped walking and pulled out a handkerchief from his pocket, which he unwrapped to reveal Akane's broken necklace. He explained what had happened and apologized for breaking it, but Akane told him it was fine and said she was even planning to throw it out. This was probably because her earlier discussion with Momo had brought her back to her senses. When they arrived at the exit, they saw that it was raining, but Akane didn't mind and dashed out after saying goodbye to Yamada. Before she could get far, Yamada stopped her and gave her his umbrella to use so she wouldn't get soaked. The next day, Akane's mother had various boxes delivered to her apartment, and in the note attached to one of them, the woman wrote that the boxes contained all Akane's stuff, which she had left at home. She had cleared out Akane's room to use as a training room and didn't want to have a place to keep her stuff, so she sent them to her. Not sure what to do with the items, Akane called Momo to come and assist her with the unboxing and sorting. Momo convinced Akane to get rid of everything, and when they finished arranging the last trash bag, Momo asked Akane what she wanted to do with the broken necklace and Yamada's umbrella. Initially, she wanted to keep the necklace since she was a hoarder, but after recalling how Yamada had told her to only keep valuable things, she decided it was time to let go of the past. They then took out the trash bags, and since Momo knew that Akane was a bit bummed out about parting with the necklace, she suggested they go drinking to cheer her up. A few hours later, they both showed up drunk at Yamada's place because Akane wanted to return his umbrella. Yamada didn't appreciate their sudden visit, but they were too drunk to register his displeasure. Momo even latched onto him and started asking for his hand in marriage, but he ignored her. Akane then told him that she had come to return his umbrella and to thank him for everything he'd done for her. Feeling much better now that she'd done what she wanted to do, Akane pulled Momo away from Yamada, and they started walking away. Just then, Yamada called out to Akane and told her to log into the game when she had time because Ruruhime was worried about her. It turned out that she hadn't logged into the game since that day when Yamada scolded her, so she promised she would do it later as she realized that was his way of apologizing to her. Sometime later, Momo convinced Akane to go on a group blind date with her, and halfway through it, Akane wanted to leave, but Momo refused to let her do that. Having no choice, she remained seated and started playing with her phone since that was the better option. Seeing this, one of the guys struck up a conversation with her, saying he'd heard that she was into games, and asked her to tell him the one she was currently playing so they could play it together since he also liked games. Believing him to truly be a gaming geek as he claimed, Akane started telling him about her online game, and it quickly became obvious that he was nothing but a clueless idiot. Later on, after the date ended and the girls headed home, Momo expressed her annoyance at the fact that Akane had preferred the company of her phone over the guys. Akane told her it wasn't her fault that none of the guys had enough riz to capture her attention and said it was more fun for her to chat with Rurihime anyway. Hearing this, Momo asked if she'd ever heard of stranger danger, as she didn't think it was a smart move to give out one's contact to a faceless online stranger. Akane swore that Rurihime wasn't a stranger and then showed her their messages, explaining that Ruri's character was an adorable cutie. Still not convinced, Momo pointed out that since anyone could be anything online, the real Rurihime might be some lonely, creepy old dude who was trying to lure her. This statement caused Akane to worry, as she realized that there might be some truth behind what Momo said. Later that night, Akane logged into the online game since she was now pretty much addicted to it, only to be disappointed that no one else was online. However, after a quick look around the guild, she spotted Rurihime and Yamada working on a potion outside. The two were so deep in their conversation that they didn't notice that Akane had logged in, and since she didn't want to disturb them, she opted to read their messages instead. To her surprise, their conversation sounded like something a couple would have, and this got Akane wondering if they were together. Just then, Yamada drew Rurihime's attention to the fact that Akane was online, so the guildmaster welcomed her. Akane apologized for interrupting their moment, but Ruri assured her that she wasn't interrupting anything. As they continued chatting with each other, Yamada told them he was logging off, so Rurihime promised to call him later. When Akane read this, she became even more convinced that the two were an item, and became sad about it for some reason. The next day, while she was in class, the thought of Rurihime and Yamada being a couple kept bugging her, so she considered stalking Yamada's social media to look for clues about the supposed relationship. On her way home after class, she was approached by the guy from the group date, whose name she couldn't remember for the life of her. As they walked together, the guy started talking about the online game since he'd gone to do some research on it, but Akane wasn't interested in talking about that. What she was interested in knowing was if he knew Yamada, since he was a popular gamer, but not surprisingly, the guy didn't know who Yamada was. so she zoned out of the conversation. When they arrived at the station, she was suddenly drawn to a girl who was a replica of Ruriheim and was surprised when the girl joined Yamada. As they walked away, Akane kept her focus on them because she was convinced that the girl was Rurihime and that she was really Yamada's girlfriend, even though he claimed he'd never had one. Soon enough, her companion noticed that she wasn't listening to him and asked if she was alright, to which she answered that she was. However, she added that she had somewhere to be and apologized as she walked away, ignoring the guy when he attempted to call out to her to plan another outing. Later that night, Rurihime texted her to invite her to a Forest of Savior-themed cafe, which was having its grand opening the following month, and added that when she met Yamada earlier, he told her he would come. That last message made Akane convinced that it was truly Rurihime she saw with Yamada, but she chose not to bring it up and agreed to visit the cafe with them. The month rolled by quickly, and soon it was the day of the cafe hangout, so Rurihime texted Akane in the morning to remind her of their plans. On her way there, Akane texted Momo to let her know where she was going, and Momo expressed her discomfort with the entire meetup. Akane assured Momo that she would be fine, reminding her that Yamada would also be there, so Momo relaxed. After leaving the train station, Akane struggled to find the cafe, even though she was using the map on her phone. While considering her next move, someone bumped into her, causing her to drop her phone. But the guy, Ida, apologized, and when he bent to pick the phone, he caught a glimpse of the pinned location on her map. After handing the phone to her, he offered to take her to the cafe since he was also heading there, and Akane was grateful. However, when they began walking, she wondered if she should have turned him down. Suddenly, Eita started talking about games and asked what her thoughts were on Forest of Savior. She admitted that she was still a newbie to it, and when she mentioned that she'd gotten scolded for putting useless items in the guild's storage, Eita looked at her in surprise. He was about to say something when he was interrupted by someone calling out his name. The person was the supposed Rurihime, and Akane felt relieved seeing her standing there with Yamada and a small man. Excitedly, she crossed the street to speak to Yamada, but as she talked to him, Rurihime came to stand beside him and even held onto his shirt possessively. The way she stared down, Akane made her want to run and hide, but she stood her ground and greeted her like they were besties. Unfortunately, Rurihime didn't return her greeting and kept staring at her in annoyance before she turned to Eita to ask who Akane was. Eita told the rude brat that Akane was their guildmate, stopping whatever the girl wanted to say next. Following this, they went into the cafe, and after they got a table for their group of 5, Akane tried to talk to Rurihime, but she got angry. She then demanded to know who Akane was and why she kept calling her Rurihime when that wasn't her character's name. This statement shocked Akane, but before she could ask follow-up questions, Eita spoke up and suggested that they all introduce themselves to each other. He decided to go first, and after introducing himself, he revealed that he was Rurihime, which shocked Akane more than anything. The only thing she managed to say was the word nekama, which was the word used to describe guys who pretended to be girls online. Eita argued that he wasn't a nekama, and then went on to explain that he and his character were the same people, even though they were different. This just made Akane even more confused, but she also felt betrayed and accused him of deceiving her with a false identity. Eita said he'd done no such thing, claiming that Rurihime was very much real, and that she was the one with whom Akane exchanged contacts and also confided in. At that moment, Akane became convinced that Eita had all the screws loose in his brain and decided not to argue with him anymore. Komoda then introduced himself to Akane, explaining that the reason they never got to interact in-game was that he spent most of his time in the dungeons. He also introduced Rurihime as Runa, Eita's younger sister, and the model for Rurihime's character design. After hearing this, Akane admitted to Yamada that she had assumed he and Rurihime were an item because of how they interacted in-game. Yamada explained that Eita was his upperclassman, so he was morally obligated to do as he instructed, even though most of the things he asked for were as sus as he was. Akane then admitted that her assumption about his relationship with Rurihime had made her believe that he had lied about never having a girlfriend before. Hearing this, Yamada told her that he would never lie about something like that, so Akane muttered to herself that she was glad. However, Runa heard her and asked if she was in love with Yamada. Her brother immediately covered her mouth and apologized to Akane for her rudeness before he explained that Runa disliked sharing the people she was close to with anyone else. When Runa finally got free, she told Eita never to touch her with his dirty hands. As the siblings bantered, Akane picked up her glass in an attempt to calm herself, because Runa's question had affected her more than she cared to admit. When she noticed Yamada observing her, she panicked even more and accidentally dropped the glass in the process. She tried to gather the broken piece, but Yamada wouldn't let her, as she could get hurt, and asked her to let the staff handle it. Feeling embarrassed, she turned away from him and refused to move until she heard him excuse himself to go make a phone call. Eita followed Yamada outside, leaving Komoda to try and make things less awkward for Akane by telling her more about their guild. He said that they had all been in the same guild in another game, and had only started playing Forest of Survivor because Eita swore it was as good as Elden Ring. Runa hardly ever logged into the game, which was why Akane had never encountered her in the game. As Komoda talked more, Runa suddenly started accusing Akane of trying to seduce her brother, the same way she'd done with Yamada. Meanwhile, outside the cafe, Eita asked Yamada why he'd lied about having to make a phone call, and Yamada admitted it was because he thought his presence was making Akane uncomfortable. Hearing this, Eita said Yamada was the most oblivious idiot he'd ever had the privilege of knowing, and proceeded to explain that Akane had acted the way she did because she was embarrassed by what happened. Yamada pointed out that there wasn't a reason for her to feel embarrassed, so Eita gave up on educating him about the 8th wonder of the world, which was women. Instead, he changed the topic and said said Yamada's description of Akane was wrong in every way, but Yamada argued that it wasn't. Realizing that arguing with Yamada wouldn't get him anywhere, Ada advised him to start being a little more observant so he wouldn't end up alone. Later on, the group stood outside the cafe, and Runa told Komoda that she disliked Akane because she felt she was a pretentious farm tool. Komoda scolded her for saying such things about someone she barely knew, but Runa stood by her belief and swore to kick Akane out of their guild before she completely wrapped Yamada and Ada around her fingers. Eventually, they said goodbye to each other, but since Yamada and Akane lived in the same area, they took the same train. During the ride, the train suddenly lurched, causing Akane to fall into Yamada's chest, so he suggested that they swap places to prevent further accidents, and she agreed. Looking around, she noticed that almost all the females on the train were gawking at Yamada, and she understood how they felt because she'd done the same when she first met him. However, she couldn't help but recall Runa's question about whether she was in love with Yamada and wondered what part of her behavior towards him led the girl to assume such a thing. Pushing the thought aside, she began talking to Yamada, who told her that he would be having pudding for dinner. Akane laughed because she assumed he was clowning, but realized he wasn't after they left the train station, and he bought some pudding. As they walked, she asked about his eating schedule, and he admitted that he survived on takeout and convenience store food because he couldn't cook. Hearing this, Akane asked him to sit on a bench and wait for her, after which she ran home to gather some food for him. When she returned, Yamada was asleep, but she woke him up and apologized for taking so long before showing him what she brought. Yamada didn't want to take the food, but Akane managed to convince him to take it, and while they were still talking, her phone rang. The caller was Runa, who explained that she'd taken her number from Eita because she wanted to apologize for her earlier behavior and hoped that they would be friends. This made Akane happy, so after she agreed to be her friend, Runa invited her to a hangout the following Saturday. After getting the phone, Akane excitedly told Yamada that she and Runa were now friends, and that they were going to meet up on Saturday. When Yamada got home later, he checked his calendar and saw that he had a tutoring session with Runa scheduled for the next Saturday, and began wondering if he'd misheard the day Akane said she was to meet Runa. When the day eventually arrived, Akane went to the place where she and Runa had agreed to meet, but to her surprise, it was a man who showed up instead of Runa. The man kept addressing her as Rurihime, and no matter how many times Akane tried to explain that she wasn't Rurihime, the guy didn't listen. This made her very uncomfortable, and as he kept talking about how glad he was to meet her, Runa sent her a text, saying that she had sent her online gaming friend to keep her company because she was running late. After reading the text, Akane's discomfort increased because she wasn't sure she could spend another second with the guy, which was why she excused herself to go to the bathroom, where she locked herself inside one of the stalls and tried to call Runa. Speaking of Runa, she was at home having a tutoring session with Yamada, who asked if she had made plans to go somewhere that day. Runa lied that she hadn't, but the next moment, she got a call from Akane and quickly ended the call so that Yamada wouldn't see it. Back in the bathroom where Akane was holed up, she became worried after Runa rejected her call, and as she tried to figure out her next move, the sus guy knocked on the door of her stall. This forced her to go on alert, as she realized she could very well become the next breaking news, so when he asked her to open the door, she refused. The man then began trying to force the door open, and all Akane could do was pray that he wouldn't succeed. Switching back to Runa, the annoying brat finally admitted to Yamada that she'd set Akane up with a stranger, but defended her actions, saying she'd done no wrong. When Yamada asked how she knew the guy, she revealed that she had contacted Ada's account, since he was one of Rurihime's diehard fans. Hearing this, Yamada turned to leave, but as soon as he opened the door, he ran into Eita, who was there to bring them some snacks. Seeing the serious looks they wore, Eita immediately deduced something was off, so Yamada explained the situation to him. Following this, he logged into his account and confirmed that Runa had truly used his account to execute her diabolical plan. As they read through the messages, Runa ignored them to look at pictures on her phone because she still refused to see that what she'd done was wrong. As far as she was concerned, they were better off without Akane, and she was doing them a favor. A little while later, a very worried Komoda arrived and began asking questions about Akane. It turned out that Ada had told the little old man that Akane had been kidnapped, so he would hurry over and help them. Eventually, explaining the truth, they all got into Komoda's van, and he began driving fast and furious to get to their destination. Ada then took the chance to scold and lecture Runa about what she'd done, but as expected, she still refused to acknowledge that she was in the wrong. When Ada told her that her try-hard Wednesday Addams attitude was the reason she had no friends, she argued that she didn't care because she had 300 online friends who loved her. She then demanded to know what was so special about Akane that had them acting like the world would end if they didn't find her. Ada answered her question with a question by asking if she'd even tried to befriend Akane and vice versa, and that was when Runa locked up completely. Eventually, they arrived at the general area of the cafe's location, and as they began their search, Yamada spotted Akane first. Just as he was about to call out to her, Santa's slightly bigger helper rushed to the table, and once he confirmed that Akane was in one piece, he turned his attention to the sus guy. As he began threatening to take legal action against the confused guy, Ada and Yamada got closer and intervened. Ada explained to Akane that they had rushed over after hearing that Runa sent someone to meet her, and they just wanted to be sure he wasn't a dangerous person. Just then, Yamada noticed that Akane had a bandage around her leg, so he asked what had happened, and the guy answered that it was his fault. He briefly explained how Akane had been startled by him in the bathroom and had hit her knee against the toilet bowl. As soon as he finished his explanation, Ada grabbed the idiot by the collar, demanding to know why he was in the women's bathroom in the first place. Sus guy answered that he'd gone in there to look for her because she was taking too long to return, and after she got hurt because of him, he got the bandages to help relieve the pain. His explanation didn't do anything to calm Ada down, so he pointed out to the guy that everyone with a properly functioning brain knew not to go into the opposite gender's bathroom for any reason. The guy argued that he'd done nothing wrong and even told Ada that he was being rude to him, but Ada didn't care, as he didn't think the guy deserved any respect. As he continued scolding him, Akane turned her attention to Yamada, who apologized for not telling her that Runa had a tutoring session with him that day. Pushing past her surprise, Akane gaslighted herself into believing that Runa had stood her up because she was having a tutoring session. Just then, she spotted Runa, but because she didn't scold or reprimand her, Runa felt uncomfortable and ran off. Akane tried to go after her, forgetting that her leg was injured until it started hurting again. Hearing Akane's painful gasp stopped Runa in her tracks, so she ran back to check on Akane. As Akane tried to respond, Ada instructed Runa to come with him for another round of lecturing. Not wanting to get scolded again, the spoiled princess turned to Yamada for help, but he told her she was on her own because he also didn't agree with the stunt she'd pulled. As Ada began pulling Runa away, Akane cried out in pain, saying that she would die if she didn't get any painkillers soon. She pleaded with Ada to go buy some for her, and even convinced Yamada and Komoda to accompany him. As for her unwanted guest, she told him to beat it, and once it was just her and Runa alone at the table, she stopped faking her stomachache. Ignoring the guilty look on Runa's face, she asked the girl what her level was in Forest of Savior, which surprised her. She had expected Akane to call her out for what she did. Instead, she was asking her about the game. When Akane kept going, Runa snapped and asked why she was acting like they were besties after everything that had happened. Not giving Akane a chance to respond, Runa admitted that she'd set everything up because she disliked her and wanted her to leave their guild. Akane didn't know how to respond to Runa's admission, but when she recalled how worried Runa had been when she fell earlier, she told the girl that she would leave her scolding to Ada. She then told her that she really hoped they could be friends, and this made Runa start crying like a baby. She also apologized for her wrongdoing, and when the guys returned later, they were surprised to see Runa being comforted by Akane. Days later, Runa visited her new bestie, Akane, and while they played Forest of Savior, Momo complained to them about how hard it was being single. Eventually, she realized she was speaking to herself because her two companions were busy with their game. She became upset and told Akane that she ought to be worried about her lack of relationship instead of playing games with Runa. When she implied that Runa had run away from home, Akane explained that Runa was only staying away during the day because things between her and Ada were still a bit tense. Momo pointed out that if Runa needed a place to lay low, it should be with people her own age, and this annoyed Runa. It was no secret that she was friendless, but she didn't like people rubbing it in. So she told Momo to stop being jealous and advised her to go home instead of polluting the air with her hater aura. Momo clapped back, and when she not so subtly threatened Runa, the wimpy kid ran into Akane's arms seeking comfort. Akane then gave her a bag of chips, which she happily began munching on as the girls talked. Momo asked Akane questions about Yamada, trying to find out if there was anything between them, and Akane assured her that there wasn't. She explained that Yamada was just a good friend of hers who was helping her improve her gaming. Runa told Akane that Yamada was the kind of guy who liked helping others and said he was still tutoring her, even though he was studying for his entrance exams. Seeing as Runa knew more about Yamada than Akane, Momo turned her attention to her, and in no time, the two turned into gossip buddies. They talked about Yamada and how he'd never been in a relationship, even though he was a walking chick magnet, and Akane ignored them to continue playing her game. During that time, she received a notification that Yamada had logged in, so she sent him a message, telling him how much she'd leveled up since the last time. She also showed him her upgraded shoes, but Yamada pointed out that she'd used the wrong material to upgrade them, causing her mood to change. She'd been so proud of her progress, but now she had to use her precious gems to fix her dumb mistake. Surprisingly, Yamada offered to give her his spare shoes, but she refused to take them, and told him that she would earn back the gems. Yamada then wished her good luck, and for the first time, added a smiling emoji to his message, which caused Akane to let out a surprised gasp. As she tried to figure out if it was truly Yamada or a bot who replied with the emoji, Momo suddenly tackled her, and as she struggled to regain her freedom, her friend told her to forget about the game for 1 second. Akane refused, and after freeing herself, she returned to her laptop to continue playing her game. But the next second, it short-circuited and began smoking, almost as if the plot gods had taken Momo's side. That evening, at Runa's house, she pushed aside her pride and spoke to Eita, telling him about how Akane's laptop went up in smoke while she was playing Forest of Survivor. Eita figured it was the update that overwhelmed Akane's outdated computer and caused it to crash. Hearing this, Runa expressed sadness at the fact that Akane couldn't play the game anymore until she'd saved up enough money to replace her laptop. The following day, since Akane no longer had a working computer, she decided to crack open her books and study, but it felt like torture because she'd rather be playing her game. Just then, someone knocked on her door, and when she answered it, she was surprised to see Yamada and Runa. Runa explained that she'd brought Yamada over so he could check on her laptop because after her discussion with Ada the previous night, he'd called Yamada and asked him to come take a look at the laptop. Yamada hadn't wanted to do it, but when he remembered how excited Akane had been about leveling up, he agreed. As he stood in Akane's apartment, he warned her not to get her hopes up, and when he started working on the computer, Akane excused herself to get them some snacks. Runa accompanied her and told her that she had left her washed plot covers on display in the room. Akane immediately rushed back to collect her precious items, and after putting them away, she returned to the kitchen to get the snacks. When she brought them out, she asked if they would like her to prepare lunch for them, and they answered that they would. Yamada even admitted that the curry she'd given him the last time was finger-licking good, causing her to feel proud of her culinary ability. Their conversation was lost on Runa, but seeing how cute they looked, she couldn't resist taking a photo and sending it to Ada. The older sibling immediately texted back, suggesting that Runa play Cupid, and the girl had no problem agreeing. However, since she didn't know how to go about it, Ada came up with a game plan. He said it would be to their benefit if Runa could create a rom-com situation, but Runa, being a Runa, decided to take things up a notch. After getting off the phone with her brother, she put her plan into motion, and the first step was to force the two unsuspecting idiots together. She did this by pushing Akane towards Yamada, hoping he would catch her. But what happened was that Akane's hair clip poked Yamada in the face. When Akane realized this, she quickly grabbed his face to inspect it for any injuries and didn't even notice how close their faces were until Yamada spoke up, asking her to move away. This led her to assume that he was annoyed with her, so she started apologizing and instructed Runa to do the same, since she was the one who caused the accident in the first place. Yamada assured them that he was fine and that he held no grudge, but the girls weren't sure if they should believe him. He then got up to leave, saying he had to rush home to get a few more things to fix Akane's laptop. As soon as the door shut behind him, Runa told Akane that Yamada's sudden departure felt like he was running away from them. This made Akane more worried, as she was now convinced that Yamada had been annoyed that she touched him without his permission, even though it had been for his own good. Later in the day, when Yamada returned to Akane's apartment, he found both girls fast asleep and his lunch waiting for him on the table. Not wanting to disturb them, he began doing his work as quietly as possible, but one of his screwdrivers fell and rolled next to the sleeping Akane. Fortunately, she was deeply asleep and didn't hear anything, so he quietly picked it up, but instead of moving, he remained there staring at her. During that time, he noticed that her hair was up and decided that he didn't like it, so he removed her hair clip and let her down like she was Rapunzel. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, so Yamada went to answer it since the girls were still dead to the world. The person on the other side of the door turned out to be Takuma, and he was beyond shocked to see Yamada and not Akane answering the door. He hadn't believed Akane's lie that she was with Yamada, but seeing Yamada there made him rethink what he thought he knew to be the truth. Yamada asked what he had come there for, and Takuma explained that he'd come to return all the containers Akane had used to pack him lunch when they were still together. It turned out that his conscience had been pricking him, and the containers were a constant reminder of what he'd done, so he used them as an excuse to come check on her. He admitted that he'd hoped that seeing her again and confirming that she was doing okay would give him some peace of mind. Yamada assured him that Akane had moved on and was thriving, so Takuma handed the containers to him and pleaded with him not to let Akane know that he had dropped by. To explain where the containers had come from, Takuma told Yamada to tell Akane that he'd found them by the door. After he took his leave, Akane suddenly opened the door, catching Yamada off guard, but he didn't let it show and told her that he'd found the containers outside the door, just like Takuma had asked him to tell her. To his surprise, Akane started laughing, but she didn't call him out for lying, and when they went back inside, Yamada returned Akane's hair clip since he still had it. Akane was surprised to learn the reason he had it and asked why he'd taken the clip off, to which he answered that he wasn't sure why. For some reason, his response made the butterflies in her stomach flutter, and she liked it. Later that week, Akane went for a job interview at a convenience store in her area, and on her way back home, she called Momo to tell her how it went. Momo questioned why she had applied for a job when she wasn't strapped for cash and didn't have to save up for a new computer, since Yamada had fixed hers. Akane explained that most of the parts Yamada used to fix her computer were given to him by Ada, so she wanted to pay them back because she didn't feel comfortable taking freebies. Understanding her reason, Momo wished her luck with the new job and told her that she had to go because she was on another group date, which she hoped would work out in her favor. Later in the day, since she was bored, Akane logged into Forest of Survivors and saw that Ruriheim was the only one in their guild room, so she approached her. While they chatted, Ruriheim revealed that Komodo was also online, which surprised Akane as she didn't see his character anywhere, so Ruriheim drew her attention to the tiny floating creature next to her. After getting over the shock of seeing him, Akane told Rurihime that she wanted to pay back the parts she was given for her computer, and asked how much it would cover the costs. Rurihime assured her that she didn't have to pay for anything, as the parts were gifts, but Akane insisted that she wanted to pay for them, so Ruriheim gave in. However, she told Akane that instead of paying with cash, she could pay with her brains by helping her complete the plans she was making with Komodo for the guild, and Akane agreed. Meanwhile, Yamada was at school doing his part in helping his classmates with the preparation for their upcoming school festival. When he stepped out to throw the trash away, some girls began discussing among themselves about how to approach him. While they were still being indecisive, a boy walked up to Yamada and tried to convince him to sign up for the pageant. He told Yamada that he wouldn't have any problem winning the competition because his adoring fans would vote for him, but Yamada refused. Moments after they finished dropping off the trash, someone called out to Yamada from their classroom window to tell him that his phone was ringing. When he returned to class, he found that his phone had been placed on a towel, and Tsubaki, the girl whose desk was beside his, claimed responsibility for it. She explained that she'd done it because the vibration of the phone had been a distraction. Yamada apologized for the inconvenience, and after he returned her towel to her, she told him that she'd watched his gaming livestream the night before and had some thoughts she wished to share. The major one was that his aims had been too sloppy and slow, and she wanted to know if he was losing his touch for shooting games because he'd been spending most of his time playing Forest of Survivor. Yamada explained that the fault had come from the game's servers, which had been overloaded, causing him to lag, but Tsubaki didn't believe him. She accused him of making excuses because he didn't want to admit that he was losing his touch. Her words left Yamada speechless because he knew there was nothing he could say to convince Tsubaki that he was telling the truth. Turning his attention to his phone, he noticed Eita had sent to their guild's group chat, asking Yamada to get tickets for all the guild members to his school festival because Akane had agreed to sponsor them. When the day of the school festival arrived, Akane, Runa, and Komoda met outside the school gates, and a little while after they went in, they spotted Eita. However, they immediately pretended not to know him because the idiot was wearing bunny ears, which made him look like a joke. Turning her attention to Runa, Akane asked the younger girl what she wanted to eat, and Runa answered that she was fine. which surprised Akane. Unsure of why that was, Akane looked to Komoda for assistance, and he told her that Runa was nervous about being at the school because she was supposed to write its entrance exam the following year. Hearing this, Akane tried cheering Runa up, and Komoda joined her, telling Runa that she would surely ace the exams, but Runa didn't share his thoughts. As they continued walking around, Runa told Akane that she needed to use the bathroom, so Akane escorted her to the bathroom. While waiting for Runa to get her business done, Akane received a text from Eita, which said they would all meet outside in 15 minutes. Wondering if Yamada was aware of this, Akane thought to text him, but had second thoughts about it because she didn't want him to think she was eager to see him or something. Just as she was about to put her phone away, she heard the sound of boxes falling and turned in that direction. To her surprise, Yamada was there helping his classmates to carry the boxes, so she tried to get his attention but was overshadowed by one of his classmates. As they talked, Akane hoped that Yamada would turn to look at her, but he didn't, and even walked back into his classroom. Feeling disappointed, Akane returned to her spot by the bathroom door, but just as she decided to go in to look for Runa, Yamada reached her shoulder. As though sensing him, Akane turned around, and he explained that he had seen her standing there earlier, but when he tried to approach, the thing with the boxes happened. Hearing that he'd noticed her first made Akane happy, but she quickly fixed her face and left to check on Runa when Yamada asked why she was smiling. Unknown to them, an expressionless Tsubaki was watching them from the door of her classroom, and she wondered who Akane was to Yamada. A little while later, Akane and Yamada took Runa to the infirmary because her nerves had refused to go away and were affecting her stomach badly. When Yamada tried to text Eita about Runa's condition, she snatched his phone away and told him that if Eita found out, he would take her home. She said she wasn't ready to go home yet because she hadn't eaten any of the delicious food she'd seen. Akane then asked what she wanted, promising to buy everything, so Runa listed what she wanted, adding that she also wanted a t-shirt. After Yamada and Akane left the infirmary, they began getting looks from all the students who were surprised to see that the Ice Prince was with a girl. Their attention made Akane uncomfortable, but Yamada, who was already used to the celebrity lifestyle, didn't seem to care. Suddenly, he bumped into his physical education teacher, and when the man saw that he was with a girl, he started teasing him, saying he didn't know that he had serious game. After he left, some of Yamada's underclassmen approached them to ask if they were dating, and Akane answered that they weren't. Still, the girls kept asking questions to satisfy their curiosity, and when Akane and Yamada finally escaped from their clutches, they collapsed on some benches outside to catch their breath. Eita and Komoda happened to find them there, so Eita laughed and revealed to Akane that Runa had gone through the same thing the year before. He then suggested that they start dating for real so that Yamada's fans would get off his back. Akane became shocked, and when Eita realized that his joke had left her feeling embarrassed, he tried to apologize, but Akane didn't want to listen. She immediately left, saying she was going to see Runa, so Yamada rushed after her, surprising Eita, who was about to do the same thing. Akane didn't even notice that Yamada had followed her because she was busy freaking out about what had happened, but when she finally noticed him, she refused to stop. Her escape plan almost failed when she accidentally bumped into Tsubaki, but she got back up and apologized to the girl before running off again. As Tsubaki wondered what had happened to Akane, she spotted Yamada approaching, so she decided to ask him instead. However, Yamada ignored her and called out to Akane, asking her to wait for him, which she surprisingly did. He then approached her and apologized for letting Eita make such a stupid joke, but his words were lost on Akane, as she was still stunned that Yamada had said her name for the first time since she met him. When she pointed it out, Yamada argued that it wasn't so, but she assured him that it was, and said she'd been so sure that he didn't even know what her name was until he said a few seconds ago. Just then, Akane noticed that they had become the center of attention again, so she grabbed Yamada's hand and ran upstairs to the door of the rooftop so they could be alone. After she apologized for dragging him away without any explanation, Yamada apologized again for what had happened outside. Akane assured him that she wasn't angry and explained that she'd run off because she felt embarrassed. Confused, Yamada asked why a dumb joke would make her feel embarrassed, but Akane refused to give him the details and said all he had to know was that she wasn't upset. Yamada then turned to leave, but Akane stopped him to ask what he would have done if she had agreed to go alone with Eita's stupid joke. Yamada didn't respond for a while, and when it looked like he'd found the right words to use, Akane cut him off, saying she was also joking. However, Yamada didn't let it go and told her that if she had agreed to date him, he would consider it an honor because she was far above his league. This answer surprised Akane, but she didn't know how to convince Yamada that he was the one out of her league, so she kept quiet and went with him to get Runa's things. Days later, Yamada went shopping at the convenience store where Akane worked, and after she rang up his items, she asked him to wait outside for a few minutes as her shift was about to end. While he did this, Akane's older coworker asked who Yamada was to her, and she answered that he was her friend. But the woman didn't believe that. She told Akane that she could bet her paycheck that Akane had feelings for Yamada, and Akane admitted that she didn't know what her exact feelings for Yamada were. A little while later, she clocked out of work and rushed to meet Yamada outside. She apologized for making him wait and explained that it was because she wanted to give him the bento as her way to repay him for fixing her computer. They then walked to the traffic light, and as they waited for it to turn green, Akane sneezed. Believing she was coming down with something, she began searching her bag for a face mask, and didn't notice she was about to get hit by a bike until Yamada pulled her out of the way. Akane froze because of his touch, but she quickly regained her composure and returned to searching for her mask. After she put it on, she turned to look at Yamada, but the boy looked as unbothered as he always did, so she didn't say anything. Later in the day, while Akane was getting her nails done by Momo, a frantic Runa called her and told her that there was trouble. However, when Akane met Runa in a playground later, the girl seemed fine, so she took the swing beside her, and that was when Runa asked if she'd seen Ada's message in the group chat. Akane answered that she had, so Runa questioned how she could remain so calm when they were about to get a new guild member. Akane told her that a new guild member wasn't a reason for her to get all hysterical, but Runa argued that it was. As far as she was concerned, they didn't need a new guildmate, and she was prepared to send the person away. She then pulled out a notebook where she'd written down a few plans to drive their new member away, but Akane told her that she wouldn't be a part of her plans and told her to forget about it. Runa was unhappy with this, but she'd already expected Miss Goody Two-Shoes to refuse, so she dropped the subject about running the new member off. She admitted that Eita had already warned her against doing anything to the new guild member, who happened to be Yamada's classmate and close friend. Akane was surprised to learn that the self-made loner had any friends at all, especially female ones. But Runa assured her that she had nothing to worry about because she assumed Akane's reaction was due to jealousy. Runa then saved Yamada's contact on Akane's phone and asked her to call him to ask about the new guild member since she was dying to know more about the mystery girl. At that time, Yamada was at his prep school with Nabaki and a guy named Okamoto, and when Akane's call came in, he refused to answer it because he didn't recognize the number. When Okamoto saw this, he began teasing Yamada, saying that he didn't want to pick up because he knew it was one of his many admirers calling, but of course Yamada ignored him. Hours later, after their classes had concluded, the three of them began walking towards the train station together, but Okamoto started whining that he was hungry. Just then, Yamada's phone rang again, so he was forced to answer it this time, and was surprised when he learned that it was Akane on the other end of the phone. As they talked, Akane sneezed, causing him to ask if she was feeling okay, and she answered that she was. Shortly after, she told him that she had to go because she was running late for work, and after they hung up, Tsubaki asked who he'd been talking to. Yamada simply answered that it was Akane, like Tsubaki knew who he was talking about. However, she figured out who Akane was after recalling their encounter at the festival. Yamada then told her that Akane was a member of his guild and said that Tsubaki would get to know her better once she joined their guild. Tsubaki became curious after he said this, so she asked what kind of person Akane was. Not surprisingly, Yamada admitted that he didn't know how best to describe Akane and told her to just be the judge when she became acquainted with Akane. The following day, while Yamada was over at Runa's place tutoring her, Akane called the younger girl to tell her that she wouldn't log into the game that night because she wasn't feeling well. Runa sympathized with her, and after she hung up the phone, she informed Yamada that Akane was sick, but he didn't say anything. Meanwhile, after getting off the phone with Runa, Akane struggled to get a glass of water for herself, and when she tried to drink it, she discovered that her throat was too swollen to allow her to swallow. Despite this, she still decided to take some medicine, but remembered that she hadn't eaten all day. She tried calling Momo to help her get some food, but Momo didn't pick up, so she decided to force herself out of bed to go to the convenience store. She somehow made it downstairs without hurting herself, but fell when she attempted to climb onto her bike to ride it. Realizing that she couldn't go anywhere in her condition, she decided to return to her apartment, but she was too weak to stand up and put her bike back in its place. Just as she was about to give up, someone arrived and helped her with the bike. Through her hazy gaze, she made out Yamada's silhouette, but assumed it was a fever-induced hallucination. Didn't think much of it before allowing the darkness to take her. Right before she hit the ground, Yamada caught her and took her back to her apartment. Meanwhile, Okamoto and Tsubaki attempted to call Yamada because he was running late, but he didn't pick up. Always wanted to make jokes, Okamoto told Tsubaki that Yamada was most likely hanging out with a girl, which was why he wasn't taking their calls. Tsubaki didn't seem to think his joke was funny and told him that Yamada wasn't the type of guy who would blow off his studies for a girl, but Okamoto disagreed. He claimed that love changed people and advised her to make a move on Yamada before another girl beat her to it. Surprisingly, Tsubaki didn't deny having feelings for Yamada and pointed out that she was well aware that she could lose Yamada at any moment. When she started crying, Okamoto was surprised and didn't know what to do to comfort her. It turned out that her feelings for Yamada hadn't developed at first sight. In fact, the first time she talked to Yamada, it was because she wanted to request that he allow her to sit and observe his gameplay. They had played a game against each other the day before, and even though Yamada won fair and square, Tsubaki assumed he'd cheated. Yamada didn't have anything to hide, so he agreed to let her watch his next gameplay, and after he finished playing the game, she apologized to him for falsely accusing him. After that day, they became friends, and Tsubaki bore witness to all the love confessions Yamada received. Each time, she felt sorry for the girl who got rejected by him, so one day she asked Yamada why he always rejected the girls who confessed to him. Yamada explained that he rejected the girls because he didn't have feelings for them, making her assume he had someone he liked, so she asked who it was. Yamada said that he didn't have feelings for anyone, and for some reason, he decided to tell her about the first girl who had confessed to him. He said that the girl used to get bullied a lot, so because of that, she avoided coming to school as much as she could. Whenever she was absent, their teacher would give him her assignments and notes to drop off at her place. When she finally decided to return to school full-time, the bullying intensified, so Yamada decided to stick beside her and be her unofficial protector. One day, the girl suddenly asked if he would remain at her side forever, and Yamada said that wasn't something he could do. Hearing this, the girl became sad, as it dawned on her that he'd only stayed with her because he felt sorry for her, and not because he had feelings for her, as she'd assumed. She was so sad that she cried her heart out, and after that day, he never saw her again because she transferred to another school. However, Yamada never forgot about her, because he felt that if he had given her the response she wanted, she never would have cried, and he felt guilty. That guilt he carried was the reason he felt uncomfortable around girls and was usually so blunt with them while rejecting their confessions. Tsubaki was left speechless after hearing his story, but vowed that she would never fall for him, as that was the worst thing she could do to herself. Back in the present, Yamada tried to give Akane some water, but it spilt out of her mouth because the swelling in her throat wouldn't let it go down. He then removed the wet pillow from underneath her head and tried to cool her temperature down with a wet cloth. Unfortunately, all his efforts were in vain. so he gave up and decided to carry her to the hospital before her condition worsened. A few hours later, Akane woke up feeling much better and tried to figure out how she got back to her apartment because the last thing she remembered was that she was standing near her bike. When she tried to get out of bed, she spotted Yamada sleeping on the floor and almost screamed in surprise, so she quietly walked to the balcony door and opened it to let some air into the room as it was suddenly feeling stuffy. Yamada woke up when the cold night air hit him, and when he saw that it was Akane who opened the door, he immediately got up to close it, and as soon as he did, she sneezed. After cleaning her nose with a handful of tissues, she asked Yamada what he was doing in her apartment when he knew she was a walking Petri dish. Yamada calmly told her to relax and promised that he would explain everything to her once she was back in her bed. Having no choice, Akane agreed, and once she was settled in, Yamada explained how he'd found her in the bike area while on his way to her apartment. His explanation made her realize that she hadn't been tripping when she saw him earlier, and knowing that he'd taken it upon himself to care for her made her feel emotional, so she started crying. Seeing her tears made Yamada worried, but she assured him they were tears of joy and thanked him for not leaving her to die outside. After she finished being dramatic, he gave her some yogurt to eat, and once she was done eating it, she returned the cup to him. Just then, one of her legs suddenly began cramping because she'd placed it wrongly, and when she cried out in pain, Yamada instructed her to stretch it out. Akane didn't want to, as the pain was too much, so Yamada pushed her blanket aside and got into bed with her. As soon as she realized what his intentions were, he began panicking and kicked out her unhurt leg in a desperate attempt to stop him, but it didn't work. Yamada easily dodged her flailing leg and worked on relieving the pain she felt in the other leg. After he accomplished his goal, he told her she was just being a big baby, and Akane thanked him for helping her, but he didn't respond. He kept staring intently at her, making her wonder if she drooled on her face or something. The next moment, he stretched out his hand towards her, causing her to back away in surprise and bump her head in the process. However, her pain was soon forgotten when she realized that Yamada had been reaching for the yogurt spoon and not her. To her surprise, Yamada laughed at how silly she was being, so she told him to knock it off and complained that he was mistreating a patient. The following morning, Akane thanked Yamada again for taking care of her, but when he tried to leave, she grabbed his jacket to stop him. Thinking she wanted something, Yamada asked what it was, but she quickly let go of him and apologized, saying it had been a subconscious action. This made Yamada weirdly look at her, but she told him not to think too much about it and leave to avoid being late for school, so he did. Hours later, Momo arrived at Akane's house with groceries and apologized to Akane for airing her calls the night before. Akane told her that she had already forgiven her and revealed that Yamada had taken care of her the entire night, which surprised Momo, so she asked if Akane had failed to tell her that she was now dating Yamada. Akane said they weren't dating, so Momo pointed out how unusual it was for a guy to spend the night taking care of a girl who was neither his girlfriend nor his close relative. As far as she was concerned, he had to have feelings for Akane or else he wouldn't have done that. However, she decided to wait until Akane was fully recovered to talk about her relationship with Yamada. When it was time for her to leave, Momo told her that when it came to love, timing was everything, so she had better act fast. Later in the day, Akane logged into Forest of Survivor, hoping that Rurim would be online and they could go hunting together. Luckily for her, Ruriheim was online, but she wasn't alone as Tsubaki was with her, so Akane joined them, and after introducing herself to her, she invited her and Ruriheim to go hunting. Tsubaki didn't feel like going, but they convinced her that it would be a great way to gain experience, and Akane even promised to show her a few tricks while they were at it, so she agreed. When they arrived at the hunting ground, Ruriheim had changed her mind about hunting and sat under a tree while Akane and Tsubaki struggled to defeat a boss-level monster. When they asked her to help them, she refused and just kept healing them whenever their health points got very low. Desperate to win, the girls started pressing all the skill buttons at once, hoping to unlock some special move that would defeat their opponent. It didn't work. As a last resort, Tsubaki came up with an idea, but that also didn't work, and in the end, the monster walked away because they couldn't defeat it. Surprisingly, this shameful defeat didn't lower their spirits, and they began discussing what they had noticed during their fight with the monster. They were sure that all these facts would help them the next time they encountered the monster, so they didn't leave anything out. Eventually, when Rurihime was fixing Tsubaki's armor, Akane logged out of the game and immediately called Yamada to tell him about how her hunt with Tsubaki had gone. During the conversation, she asked for tips on how to defeat the boss-level monsters, and that was how what was supposed to be a brief conversation went on for hours. When Akane finally realized how much time had passed, she told Yamada she was glad she got to hear his voice, and then hung up the phone. However, her hands wouldn't stop shaking because she knew what saying those words to him meant. Before she could go into full panic mode, she called Momo and told her that she had something important to discuss with her. Believing it was something related to Yamada, Momo refused to have the discussion over the phone and insisted that they meet up and talk about it when Akane was fully recovered. So, a week later, they met at a cafe. But Momo was completely disappointed when she learned that the so-called important discussion was about Takuma and not Yamada. Akane asked Momo if she could tell her why Takuma dumped her, and instead of answering the dumb question, Momo called the waiter over to take their orders. After the waiter left, Momo expressed her disappointment at hearing that it was Takuma that Akane wished to discuss. She asked if Akane was still hung up, and the guy and Akane assured her that she wasn't. She explained that she was only curious to find out why she'd been dumped because she believed it was the only way she could move on completely. Hearing this, Momo realized how what happened had left Akane feeling insecure, so she assured her that she hadn't been the problem. At that moment, two guys walked into the cafe, and when they spotted Momo and Akane, they approached their table. ignoring the waitress who was trying to get their attention. As soon as Momo noticed them, she recognized them from the last group date she'd been on, and she wasn't happy since they had been too handsy for comfort. She told Akane to ignore them, so that was what she did, but the guys were too stupid to understand when they weren't wanted because they were talking to the girls. Just as it was becoming too uncomfortable, the waiter returned with their order, and Akane was surprised to see that it was Eita. Having read the situation, Eita calmly asked the guys who they were, and they answered that they were old friends of Akane and Momo. However, the waitress they had ignored when they walked in came and whispered in Ada's ear that they were lying, so he asked the guys to take another table. When they refused, he stopped playing nice and repeated the statement with a firmer voice, leaving no room for argument. Immediately, the guys became intimidated, and after they agreed to take another table, Ada returned to his usual nice guy self. Momo then asked Akane how she knew Ada, and Akane told her that he was one of her guildmates in Forest of Survivors. Hearing this, Momo thought to herself that if all gamers were built like Eita, she wouldn't mind dating one. Later on, after the cafe closed and Ada clocked out, he was surprised to see that Akane and Momo were waiting for him. After making a stupid joke about why they waited, Akane told him that they had something important to discuss with him. Following this, the three of them walked to a nearby park to talk, but because Elaine was feeling nervous, she didn't say anything for a long time until Momo blurted out that she was in love with someone. Akane felt embarrassed that her secret had been revealed, but Ada thanked Momo for saving them time, and then revealed that he already knew who the lucky guy was. Feeling shy, she asked him not to say the name, and Ada respected her wishes, but Momo had other plans. She told Ada that the reason Akane had not yet confessed was that she was too busy wondering why her ex had dumped her. To help him understand why, Akane explained the situation to him, and after listening to her, Ada advised her to be like Nike and just do it. He assured her that if she confessed and was rejected, he and Momo would be around to cheer her up. This was all the motivation Akane needed, so she left to try her luck, leaving Eita alone with Momo, who tried to put moves on him and failed. When Akane arrived at Yameda's place, he was surprised to see her and asked if she wanted something from him. Akane hesitated to respond, and when she finally built up the courage to speak, the voices of two elderly people greeting each other on the street, combined with a dog barking, cut her off. Yamada then told her that he needed to get ready to go to prep school, and asked her to wait, so she agreed. However, he surprised her by reaching behind her to pull the door shut, effectively pushing her against his body. Unaware of the effect his closeness had on her, Yamada walked off to get changed, leaving Akane alone to calm her racing heart. Unfortunately, that didn't work, because the next second, the guy took off his shirt as though he were trying to seduce her, and she immediately looked away to avoid further temptation. A few moments later, he was dressed and they set off towards the train station together. Akane was lost in thought the entire time, and she pondered whether or not to confess her feelings to him. She almost walked into oncoming traffic. Yamada quickly pulled her back and asked if she was okay, but she didn't respond, as she was still in shock. Seeing this, he grabbed her hand when the traffic signal turned green and led her the rest of the way. When they arrived at the train station, he apologized for not having enough time to speak to her, and she told him they could always talk another time. Yamada then turned to leave, but couldn't because of the look on Akane's face, so he told her that he'd call her after his classes, and she agreed to wait until then. After they parted ways, it started raining heavily and didn't stop falling even after Yamada's classes were over. As they prepared to leave, Okamoto asked Yamada how he was getting home, and Yamada told him that he'd brought an umbrella with him. Hearing this, Okamoto asked Yamada to share the umbrella with him, but when he learned that Tsubaki also didn't have an umbrella, he suggested that she go with Yamada instead. Tsubaki didn't want to, but Okamoto urged her to use the chance to confess her feelings to Yamada, so she agreed. A little while after she and Yamada began walking to the station, he noticed that her shoulder was getting rained on. So he gave her the umbrella and dashed towards the station. Tsubaki tried going after him, but bumped into someone and fell, losing her glasses in the process. As she began looking for them, Yamada returned and helped her find them, but they were already broken. Tsubaki didn't mind since it was better than nothing, and as she gazed at his blurry figure, she suddenly blurted out that she liked him. When she realized what she'd just said, she dropped the umbrella and covered her mouth like it would cancel out what she'd just said. Not surprisingly, Yamada didn't react to what she said and simply picked up the umbrella for her. Feeling overwhelmed, Tsubaki broke down into tears and apologized to Yamada for suddenly springing her confession on him. When he still didn't say anything, she asked him to at least think about what she said before rejecting her. Later that night, Yamada texted Akane, telling her that he couldn't talk to her that night because he was tired and said that they would talk some other time. The following day, while Yamada was tutoring Runa, Ada came into the room, acting like he knew something they didn't. After taking a seat on the bed, he asked Yamada if anyone had confessed to him recently, and Yamada, thinking he was talking about Tsubaki, asked how he'd found out. This made Eita assume that Akane had gone through with her confession, so he refused to tell Yamada how he knew, and asked how he'd responded to the confession. Yamada answered that he was still thinking things over, which surprised Eita because Yamada never thought about things like that. He then advised him not to take too long to decide, as drawing it was almost the same as leading the girl on, and that wasn't good. That evening, Yamada went to Akane's workplace, but for some reason, he didn't go inside. Her coworker was the one who spotted him and informed Akane that he was around, surprising her, so she went out to speak with him. When she asked why he hadn't told her he was coming, Yamada explained that he'd tried calling, but her phone had been switched off. Akane apologized, saying that her phone battery had died, and then asked what he wanted to discuss because she'd noticed he was acting differently. Yamada claimed he was just tired from all the extra studying he'd been doing recently, but Akane didn't believe him. Still, she didn't try to force him to talk and began telling him about the new sword she'd gotten. In his attempt to engage her, Yamada asked what kind of sword she got, and she told him to hold out his hand so she could draw it for him. After concluding her artwork, she admitted that she didn't like the brooding Yamada and said she wished he'd go back to being his mysterious self. When she finished speaking, Yamada admitted to her that he wasn't the typed to talk about his feelings because he was afraid people would misinterpret them. He also admitted to feeling worthless and said that the fact that he was slow to understand jokes and feelings only intensified that feeling. Akane assured him that he was worthy and told him never to look down on himself again, because to everyone who knew him, he was the most kind-hearted and caring person they had ever met. Following this, Yamada met Tsubaki that night, and before he even spoke, she already knew what he wanted to say to her. However, she allowed him to speak, and when he told her that he couldn't accept her feelings, she told him that she hadn't expected him to. Seeing as she no longer had anything to lose, she decided to tell him why she liked. And as she listed the things she liked about him, Yamada just stood there and listened attentively. When she finished, she broke down in tears, but told him that she didn't regret telling him how she felt because it made her feel better. For some reason, this brought tears to Yamada's eyes, so he quickly tried to wipe them away, drawing Tsubaki's attention to the sword Akane had drawn on his hand earlier that day. Curious, Tsubaki asked who had drawn it, and Yamada answered that it was a friend, but she had a good idea who that friend was. When she mentioned it to him, she made sure to say it was the person he liked, and Yamada admitted that he did like Akane more than just a friend. This admission caused Tsubaki to cry again, but she managed to tell him that she was glad he listened to her and turned her down nicely, unlike the other girls who had come before her. When she finally calmed down, she bid Yamada goodbye, but when she turned to leave, she ran smack into a vending machine because she wasn't wearing her glasses. Yamada then offered to walk her home, but Tsubaki was too embarrassed to accept his offer and assured him that she would be fine on her own. Days later, Akane, Eita, Runa, and Kamota visited a new restaurant, and as soon as they walked inside, it was as though everyone there knew who Komoda was because a lot of people came to greet him. After getting settled in their private dining room, they were served dinner, and as they ate, Akane declared that she had never tasted meat like that before. Eita agreed, and then said it was a shame that Tsubaki was going to miss out on it. At the mention of Tsubaki's name, Runa said that she was glad that she wasn't coming because she still hadn't accepted her into their guild yet. The next moment, 4 members of the staff walked in, each carrying a different item, and they informed Komoda that the items had been sent by his friends, and the little man thanked them. He then asked his Eita and Runa to enjoy the food since he and Akane were the only ones who were legally allowed to drink alcohol. Sometime later, when Yamada arrived, Runa excitedly started telling him how delicious the food was, but the next moment she went quiet, and as her expression changed to one of fear, she told him that Yamada had returned. Yamada was about to ask why Akane's return was making her afraid, but before he could get the words out, a very drunk Akane attached herself to him and started babbling nonsense. Runa then explained that Akane had helped herself to the bottle of wine Komoda's friends sent over, and pleaded with him to take Akane away, as she'd been overly affectionate towards her since she got drunk. Yamada didn't have to be told twice that Akane needed to go home, so he apologized to everyone for ditching before dining, and then took Akane away. A little while later, while they were outside the train station, Yamada got Akane a bottle of water, and after she thanked him for it, she apologized for making him miss dinner. Since she'd slept off a little while ago, she felt a bit better, and asked Yamada to return to the restaurant, assuring him that she could get home by herself. Yamada obviously refused and said that leaving her on her own was out of the question because there were many drunk people around, and he didn't want to test fate. Holding out his hand, he asked Yamada to take it, and after she did, he began leading her through the crowd of people, but they had to stop when one of her shoes got stuck in a crack. Yamada bent to remove it, and after putting the shoe on her feet like she was Cinderella, he got back up and took her hand again. Soon, they arrived at her apartment, and Akane thanked Yamada for walking her home. Once he saw that she'd pulled out her keys, he turned to leave, but Akane called out to him and unexpectedly asked if he liked her. To her surprise, Yamada cracked a smile and told her that he hadn't expected her to figure it out so soon. Refusing to jump to conclusions or assume anything, Akane attempted to ask him to explain what he meant in detail, but his intense stare shut her up and allowed him to tell her that he did like her. He said he would tell her again in the morning, because he didn't trust her to remember his confession. After all, she was too drunk, and even if she did, she might write it off as a joke. When he turned to leave again, she requested that he call her in the morning to repeat what he said, and he promised that he would, after which he hugged her goodnight. When morning came, he called her up as promised, and made sure to let her know that everything he told her the night before was true. Later in the day, while Akane was at school, she told Momo about the new development, and Momo was happy to hear the news. During their lunch break, they sat with a mutual friend of theirs who said Akane was commendable for dating a guy younger than her. Her words left Akane feeling uneasy, and she wondered if Yamada would be bothered by it, so when she met him later at a cafe, she tried not to act all lovey-dovey in case he wouldn't like it. She also told him that she would do her best not to be a burden to him, but Yamada didn't hear what she said because he was focused on her teeth. When he admitted this, Akane became embarrassed, but he assured her that she didn't have to be because she had perfect teeth. Shortly after, they left the cafe, and as they walked to Akane's apartment, she couldn't help but stare at Yamada, so he asked if she couldn't get enough of his handsome face. Akane admitted that she was trying to figure out the best way to ask him to hold her hand, so he saved her the trouble. And as he held her hand, he told her that she should never be hesitant to tell him anything. Do you think Yamada fell for Akane first? Or did he fall last and fall harder? If you watched up to this point and enjoyed this video, comment simp. Also, why don't you check out this next video? You might like it even more.